this your place?
No. No, I live with my mom.
Oh.
Yeah. You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and are we entering the rental economy? Here to help us determine when renting is the best option, we welcome the guy behind the Retirement Starts Today podcast, CFP Benjamins Brandt. And from the Afford Anything podcast, it's Paula Pant. And finally, the guy who'd rent you the right to mow his lawn, it's OG. But of course, that's not all. Today, we'll celebrate the beginning of the long Labor Day weekend in the USA with some Labor Day trivia. And now, a guy who's ready to get on with it so we can fire up the grill for the unofficial last weekend of summer, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Hey everybody, happy Friday to you. I am Joe Saul-Sehy, and I can't wait to get the grill fired up. Doug, what do you like to fire up on Labor Day weekend?
It's a PG show, Doug. Be careful.
You cannot tee it up for me like that.
I know it's Michigan. What's legal there may not be legal everywhere.
There's gasoline cans involved, pallets that I get from surplus lumber yards. It's a big old fire.
Oh man. OG, what are you cooking? What's cooking at the OG residence on Labor Day weekend?
Oh, absolutely. Double tomahawk ribeyes.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I'll be there. If I were in a Camp 5 this weekend.
Slow roasted and then seared afterward.
Oh,
it's just,
man.
Yeah. Too bad there's none extra.
Paula Pant, do you have you live in a high rise. Do you have is there a common area, or do you have like a little porch patio thing where you can?
We have grills in the common area.
Whoa!
Yeah,
hey,
we've got
modern amenities.
Three large grills, and right next to it there's a bocce ball area, and then there's an outdoor movie theater. So
perfect. Yeah, grill. Work it off with some bocce ball. I don't know if you're burning many calories in bocce ball, and then go watch a movie, which you never do. So
exactly.
Yeah, but are you big weekend plans for Labor Day?
No particular plans. Yeah, it's gonna be a low key weekend, because that's what you think of when you think of Manhattan. You think low key weekend.
Well, I don't know. I think low-key weekend, Paula. You know what I think?
What's that?
I think North Dakota. Because Benjamin Brandt, certified financial planner and the host of Retirement Starts Now podcast, joins us. Ben, definitely. Is there a stressful, high alert weekend in North Dakota? I don't think so.
Well, 4th of July, 4th of July, if lots of fireworks, if you want to keep all 10 fingers, you got to be on high alert. So.
You got to. And you told us, by the way, when we came and visited you a couple of years ago, it was North Dakota, way more beautiful than I could have expected. I didn't think it wouldn't be. I just didn't think about it, which is why you guys have those stickers that say save the best for last, because North Dakota knows that you save the best for last. But you told us about a place where they made us steaks on pitchforks. They took pitchforks and put it in
pitchfork fondue. Yeah. At the Teddy Roosevelt National Park, Medora, North Dakota.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of flag wave. Like this has Labor Day written all over it. Lots of flag waving and Americana and
all you can eat Americana. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, tell the three people that have not heard you on the show before about Retirement Starts Today.
Yeah, Retirement Starts Today. Every Monday morning, we talk about retirement topics, both financial and non-financial.
So you own that brand. You're not renting it, Ben, just to be clear.
That's right. Yep. I rent it from the government. I mean, they charge me to use it, but in theory, I own it.
That is so true in so many ways. Even if you own your own property free and clear, if you stop paying property taxes, watch how quickly you don't own it. It's very strange. This is from the piece we're going to talk about today. Americans are embracing a rent-first lifestyle, preferring to try things out rather than committing to ownership. Listen to this, guys. More than 1 in 4 Americans say they rent or lease their car, clothing, electronics, or furniture, according to a new survey commissioned by personal finance firm Credit Karma. That's what we're going to talk about today. A recent Wall Street Journal piece about extreme rentals. Has renting gone too far, or is this a good thing? I think we'll probably find the middle ground. But you know what else we'll find, Paula?
What's that?
We'll find that State Farm is awesome enough that they sponsor these Friday episodes. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Is that good? No? Should I keep going?
Nailed it.
Talk to your local agent today. State Farm helps us make this episode free for you. We have a couple more sponsors that make this free. We also have a couple that we'll introduce you to during Doug's trivia at the midway point. But besides that, we're going to be ad-free. So let's hear from them right now so that we can get the show on the road. Benjamin Brandt here, Paula Pant. Benjamin Brandt, Paula Pant. That sounds great. And OG, neighbor Doug. Let's get this party started. All right, our piece today comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, and this is all about extreme renting. We often hear, OG, that renting is a waste of money, right? If you rent it because you don't have any equity. These people in this piece that we're talking about, they challenge that. Some of these people rent everything. Where do you think the middle ground is on this? On renting? Where do you draw the line on renting?
I'm so happy that I get to have equity in my furniture, and I'm so happy to have equity in my clothes. And because that's the argument, right? It's like, well, you don't have any equity in those things. I don't know that there's a consumable versus equity thing. I don't know. I don't really put clothes in the category of super valuable in terms of, it's not on my balance sheet, right? It's nothing that I'm going to jot down and say, I can go leverage this for my financial future. It's an expense. And I don't know that there's any material benefit to having an expense be a rental expense or a consumption expense that has a, end life somewhere down the line. I bet it kind of works out to be about the same.
It's funny. I think, Ben, that OG makes a good point. I mean, people instinctively, when they talk about renting, they talk about having equity in it, right? When you own something, you own it, and you can later then sell it to somebody else and recoup some of the cost, potentially making it less costly. Are there flaws in that thinking?
I would say there's not flaws in the thinking. I think generationally too, there's a big difference between owning and renting. I think older people want to own more things, and younger people are either maybe priced out of buying or are more comfortable with renting. There's definitely a line in the article. They talked about renting their clothes. I could understand a minimalist lifestyle, but returning your clothes, or that just seems like a bit of a bridge too far. Maybe I'm too set in my ways.
Like a subscription cost for your skivvies. I don't know. That doesn't seem like something that I want to deal with. I don't know.
There may be somebody on our panel who rents her clothes.
Mm-hmm. I love renting clothes. I rent a lot of my clothes. And so the reason that I do it, it's a fewfold. One is...
Fewfold?
Yeah, it's not like twofold. It's like more than two. So it's a fewfold.
If I rented my clothes, I would never fold them, ever.
Well, yes, that is one of the benefits. So one of the benefits is they send you clothes, you wear them until they're dirty, and then instead of washing them, you just send them back. So that's fun. You basically don't have to do laundry, which particularly when it comes to things that would get dry cleaned, like blazers, or like professional clothing. It saves on all, like, not just the dry cleaning costs, but the time to take it to the dry cleaner and then pick it up and all of that. In addition to that, you can try on a lot of different styles and a lot of different, things. Like, if you want some variety in your wardrobe, you can have all of that variety without committing to it. And then the third reason, and this is one of the biggest ones for me, is I live in Manhattan. So I live in a 600 square foot apartment with two people, right? So two people in 600 square feet. And then you think of cycling out summer clothing and winter clothing. And there just isn't that much space. And so if you have clothing that you're renting, then you don't need the storage space for that you don't have. You could either pay for, the markup of having a bigger apartment, or relatively the much cheaper cost of living in a small footprint and renting.
I usually reference at the top that we will link to the piece that we're discussing on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and it is behind a paywall. So if you get the Wall Street Journal, you'll be able to click through it. If not, you won't be able to. I don't think that it's super important, but I am going to reference the piece a little more often than I do on Fridays, because the people in this piece are very interesting to this topic. To your point, Paula, Jamie Jackson Cole, an elementary school teacher in Oklahoma, started renting her work outfits last year from a site called Nuuly, N-U-U-L-Y.
Yeah, I know Nuuly.
The company, owned by Urban Outfitters, mails her 6 items each month for about $100, then another 6 after she mails those back. Cole learned about clothing rentals from her 26-year-old daughter, Keely, after seeing her sporting a pink heart sweater around Valentine's Day last year, just like OG does. Recently, a fellow teacher complimented Cole on her dress, a pink and green number with a horse print. When she confessed it was rented, the colleague replied that she rented clothes too. She said, "We get tired of wearing the same thing over and over." Is that part of it, Paula?
Yeah, like I said, the variety. So if you don't want to necessarily be wearing the same pieces over and over and over. And plus, again, as the seasons change, you need different clothes in May than you do in January. Seasonally. And then on top of that, if your sizing changes, let's say you're working out a lot and you're losing weight or you're gaining muscle,
or gaining weight, losing muscle like Doug.
Yeah. Or maybe you stop working out and you quickly start gaining body fat. Like your sizing can really fluctuate. And so I'll just tell you, in my storage unit, I have a bunch of clothes that will fit me 25 pounds from now. I call them aspirational. So not only then do you have summer clothing and winter clothing, but you also have your, clothing that fit you 25 pounds ago versus clothing that fits you now. So you need the clothing that fits you now, but you don't want to get rid of the clothing that did fit you 25 pounds ago because you're determined that you'll get back there,
I totally have those in my closet.
Yeah, so then you've got all of these clothing, not just for different seasons, but for different body weight categories.
It's funny though, back to Ben's point, like when I think of rented clothes, I can't not think of, well, let me play what I normally think of when I think of rented clothes.
Bud Light presents Real Men of Genius.
Real man of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Tuxedo Shop Tux Renter.
Mr. Tuxedo Shop Tux Renter.
When the evening calls for 5 groomsmen in identical robin's egg blue double-breasteds, you are there.
It's your wedding day.
Last night, little Jason Weinstein had the slow dance of his life in the exact same pants I'm now wearing.
Lucky Jason Weinstein.
Any schmo can wear a suit, but only a gentleman can pull off a canary yellow set of tails with a matching top hat.
You're a star.
So crack open an ice-cold Bud Light Titan of the Tux, because a classy event always calls for rented clothes.
Mr. Tuxedo Shop Tux Renter.
Bud Light Beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
My favorite line from that whole group of commercials might be because little Jason so-and-so had the slow dance of his life in the pants I'm now wearing. Ben, is it, we were joking about the renting skivvies factor earlier. Is it like a grossness? Like, why do you not think about renting clothes the same way that Paula does?
Yeah, I don't know. You rent cars and you sit in the same place. That's not too far. I don't know. I don't think
Jim Gaffigan, to your point, says, "Hey, anybody want my used mattress?" Everybody's like, "Oh, hell no." He's like, "Hey, let's go stay in a hotel."
Right, exactly. I don't know that I'm the target demo. I wear elastic cargo shorts, so it's year round. It's golden.
But still, you could rent those. Who needs it? But you wear them over and over and over. Paul, right. I do have a question for you. In the contract, what if you spill wine on something that's not going to come out, or it accidentally gets ripped? What happens then?
I think so. I use Rent the Runway, and I think technically the contract says like, all right, if it's minor damage, that's no big deal. We'll take care of it. But if it's major damage, then you're on the hook. I believe, I would have to double check the fine print. I believe that is technically what it says. In all practicality, I mean, I've never done like major damage, but definitely like I wear tinted sunblock. And so the collars of any shirt that I'm wearing, often it gets makeup, like it gets foundation, it gets tinted sunblock, and like tinted sunblock, like think of brown sunblock. It's hard to get that out of fabric because it's like sunblock. It's meant to stick.
But they've never made you pay for
yeah,
that.
never.
Never. There is another couple in this piece. And OG, I think I want to go to you with this one. Their townhouse came with the furnishings. They pay around $1,100 each in rent. So for the two of them, these roommates, it's $2,200, and it includes all the furniture. They figured they could find something a little cheaper that didn't have furniture. But listen to this. They say, but it would have cost at least $5,000 to bring their own stuff during their cross-country move from North Carolina. So I think about $5,000 to take their stuff across country, one-time fee versus the ongoing fee. Like, I feel like these people might not know math. Like I think sometimes when we're renting, we're not thinking clearly enough about the math, or am I missing something?
Well, I think the missing part is what's the difference between what the rent could be and what they're paying. Obviously, if it's $50 a month difference or, whatever, you can kind of decide whether or not that's worth it. I do think that there's something around, if you're kind of in that stage of life. We moved from a 4-bedroom colonial to a 3-bedroom not colonial apartment. And in hindsight, I think we probably could have left all of our stuff in Michigan and just went like, whatever, we'll just get new things. The amount of money and energy that it took to pack our stuff and haul it across the country and the stress and all that sort of thing. I bet that there was an easier way to do that move. Now, having had more time here now, another 10 years or 11 years in Dallas, and we have more things and, that sort of stuff, and arguably a little nicer. I don't know that our first set of furniture at our house when we first were married is the same caliber of stuff that we have now. So maybe there's a little different there. But my point here is I think that where you are stage of life, it can make sense just to go, I'm not buying, a nice, to your point, mattress yet. I'm hauling around whatever I had from elementary school still. I'm not at the, like, my back hurts all the time, I got to spend $7,000 on a mattress yet. Now you get to that spot, I think you want to carry that thing with you because that's a big thing to flip over, or just do the 100-day free thing with all the mattress companies for the better part of 5 or 6 years. I bet all of the direct to consumer mattress companies could hook you up for a solid 18 months, I bet, of free mattresses if you were.
Speaking of that, this episode brought to you by Casper.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned Casper, Joe. I had a friend who, I'm almost sure it was either Casper or Purple, but a friend who bought one, did not like it, I think within the 100 days or whatever the time frame was, and said, I'm going to send it back. And they said, don't bother, just keep it.
Now we're good.
Because it's not worth it to them because you can't package those things back up the way they come to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just shipped in like a little box, and it explodes when it's in your living room.
It is a miracle of science watching those things inflate.
Yeah.
Forever.
It makes you wonder what goes in, what's inside of them. That, it's like, where do all the springs go that are supposed to poke me in the back?
Is that the key, by the way, then? Is that our hack? Just get a Casper mattress, and 100 days later ask for your money back, and then you keep the mattress too? You didn't hear that here. We have no idea. Can neither confirm nor deny. Is that, Ben? It sounds like the point we're making is that this might be either, is it generational, meaning people that are older, they're used to buying stuff, are not going to rent stuff, or is it just stage of life, or maybe both?
It could be both. I had a similar situation at my house. Our triplets turned 7, and we wanted to rent a bouncy house. And I looked at the bouncy house, and it was like $100 to rent it, or you could go to Walmart, and it was like $300 to buy it. And I was like, well, I'm going to use it more than 3 times, so I bought it. But what I neglected to think about was we have 8 people that live in our house, right? Space is limited. So I'm folding this thing up and I'm like lugging it up a ladder with one arm to try to put it, in the storage. And it's like, what's my life worth, right? I could have just, for $100, like some guy would have came and taken this problem away from me. So my problem is I'm looking at everything through the lens of return on investment. And in this instance, it was not a good idea.
Yeah. Is that the case, Paula? Do you agree that this is sometimes about more than money?
Yeah. It's about money. It's well, like what I said earlier about dry cleaning, right? The dry cleaning of professional clothing. Part of the value that you get is it's not just the cost savings. It's also the convenience factor of knowing that there is a chore or an errand that is now off of your plate, right? So then it frees up your time.
Yeah, sticking with you, by the way, another woman in this piece, Berkeley Brooks, feels as though she was raised to rent, she says. Her parents told her, and this gets to the math, her parents told her never to buy anything that would lose its value within 5 or so years. You agree with that?
Huh. Well, so I'm reminded of our old friend Greg McFarlane, who used to always say his
Longtime contributor.
longtime contributor to the Stacking Benjamins Roundtable, and he always said, "Buy assets, sell liabilities." Sell or rent. The corollary to that was sell or rent liabilities. Now, obviously, like my Post-it notes, are technically a liability, but I buy them. You're going to have those small consumables, my kitchen sponges, my dish soap, my things like that. But as an overall thesis, I think that really follows.
It's OG, you agree with that math? 5 years or so, lose its value. Don't buy those things.
I mean, again, I think it's going to be very uniquely situational because the same could be said for cars, and we don't really like the idea of leasing cars and renting cars. Now, on the other hand, if you were to take a car and say, I'm not going to have a car payment, instead I'm going to rent a car, I'm going to rent Uber. And I think we were talking about this, I don't know, maybe
we did. We postulated.
I got yelled at.
Is it better to just Uber?
And yeah, it's like at some point, especially, take Paula, for example. I mean, Paula, if you had to have a car, have a parking space, pay for a car insurance in Manhattan, which, probably is not inexpensive relative to other places, just again, due to the density, it's like, that's a real cost. Mm-hmm. And that thing sits there versus like, yeah, I get Uber Black every so often whenever I have to go anywhere. And yeah, that costs money too, but it's pound for pound a lot less.
Exactly.
In Ben's scenario, where maybe there's a little bit more space and there's, not the density in terms of people and, all these other sorts of things, maybe Uber's not as available and that price, supply demand thing gets a little fouled up and Uber's more expensive. But I don't know that just purely looking at like buying versus leasing cars. I've done both. I'm really glad that I bought the last one. I'm also really glad I leased the one before that so that I could get rid of the damn thing as soon as I got it. I couldn't wait to get out of that car. But I also know almost across the board, the number works out to be about the same. I think, Doug, you and I have talked about this before, that we just kind of feel like whether you lease a car and get a new one every 3 years, you take the 10-year cost versus buy a new car.
We're going here again.
We are. It's happening.
You own it for 10 years.
And the other unique thing about the situation,
Paul and Ben, it's these two against the rest of the world.
Well,
but anyway,
the other thing where it's situational, right? The other use case that OG and I have talked about where leasing may make sense is you have a kid going to college and you're not going to provide them with a car after college, but you want them to have reliable transportation for 3 or 4 years. And then so you can just wash your hands of it. Lease goes away, kid graduates, you're done with the whole thing. And you might be able to do that for $220 a month for basic transportation. Might be a heck of a lot cheaper than what I provided my kid with, which was the 09 Traverse everybody's heard about, which OG's brother told me to sell the second he even heard the model and year of it. And I didn't. And I paid way more than I would have had I just gotten rid of it and leased a cheap car.
I think the 10-year cost is about the same. I think sometimes you're going to roll the dice and you're going to be way cheaper by owning. And I think sometimes you're going to roll the dice and leasing is going to be better off if you get a lemon. But I bet if you asked 100 people, you're going to get an average of 10-year cost is the same.
Let's talk about other things, renting other things in the second half of the show. Renting a phone, they talk about in this. Renting tools. You can, of course, now put your own stuff up for rent. Is that a good deal? What are the potential pitfalls there?
Children.
Renting when Ben said triplets, Ben, when you said triplets, I'm like, whoa, I thought you were going to say, and when I tried to rent them out,
had no takers.
It's surprising.
Do you need some kids for your family reunion? Are you sick and tired of your parents asking you, when are you going to have kids? Well, here's 3 that you can bring with you to the next holiday event.
And then they go elsewhere.
They'll even call you mom and dad for an extra fee.
I have a two-part closing thought, if you're curious.
Yes.
Do you think there's clothing rental repo men? And if so, could we sell that show to the Discovery Channel?
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Chasing Paula down the street, like pulling at the dress.
Oh, speaking
Show
of,
up to your office. We're going to have to confiscate that shirt.
That's right.
Speaking of, Ben, I know you're tongue in cheek, but there was a movie. What was this? It was called Repo Men. Jude Law and Forrest Whitaker. You rented your body parts. So like if your kidney went out, you rented a new kidney And if you didn't pay your thing, they repoed it. And it was a very graphic movie, as I recall. Doug, you're nodding like you might have.
I was with you until you said who was in it, because there was also a long, long time ago a Repo Man. That was just a bizarre, like, independent movie with, I think, Emilio Estevez in it, like one of his first roles ever from the early '80s. So I was nodding my head to something else.
It wasn't that long ago, but yeah, it was an interesting take on renting things.
I just remember Jeff Foxworthy in his memoir, which, by the way, Jeff Foxworthy in memoir, obviously not a book that's going to win any big awards, but hilarious from the beginning to the end. He talked about how when he was completely broke and the repo guy showed up to take his Firebird, and the repo guy said, give me a check for $250 right now, or I got to take your car. And he said, Jeff goes, $250? I don't have, who has $250? And the repo man goes, well, could you just write a check? And Jeff goes, check? I thought you wanted money. Here, I'll just pay the whole thing off. And he writes a check for all of it, which obviously probably wasn't going very far. In the second half, we are going to talk about specifics and get a little more technical on this idea of not so extreme renting, but when you do rent stuff. But at the halfway point of every Friday show, we have this ruthless competition between our three frequent contributors, OG, Paula, and Mom. And Mom can't be bothered coming down the stairs. She really doesn't care about trivia. So, Ben, today you're playing on behalf of Mom, which brings up some good news and some bad news. Mr. Brandt, which one would you like first?
Bad news.
The bad news is you're not winning. OG is winning. OG has 11. You have 9. Paula feels very comfortable with 8 right behind. But Paula was on a roll before this. So is she going to come back and tie you? But what's going to happen is once we get our trivia question, OG is going to guess first. Ben, you'll go second on behalf of Mom. And then Paula will guess third. But we need a trivia question so that we can see who's going to win this week's competition. So, Doug, here we go.
Hey there, Stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and let me be the first to welcome you to Labor Day weekend. It's the weekend you watch racing on television and celebrate being able to wear white again. Wait, what? What's that, Steve? Uh-huh. Really? Okay, Steve, let's rewind that. Welcome to Labor Day weekend. This is the weekend when we celebrate our independence from those redcoats across the pond. Wait, what's that now? Really? Fireworks. All right, cool. All right, take 3. Welcome to Labor Day weekend when we celebrate our independence from the man. That's right, those of us laboring while oh my G-Fi and oh Joe, if you know who I'm talking about, revel in sitting around taking credit for our work. Am I right, ladies? Of course I am. Let's get you some Labor Day trivia to celebrate. Us. While some of us get 100% raises handed to us all the time by our amazing bosses, others languish, which is why countries around the world passed minimum wage laws. The highest minimum wage in the world? That's in Luxembourg, a country I thought Joe and OG had made up until just a couple minutes ago, but it turns out it's a real place. My bad, Luxembourgians. Here's today's question in euros. How high is Luxembourg's minimum wage per month as of 2023? I'll be back right after I figure out whether the X should have been silent in Luxembourg. Maybe I'll figure it out.
I think you go ahead and say the X. You can say it however you want to, but I think they pronounce it with the X. OG, a month of minimum wage in Luxembourg.
A month?
A month.
It's not per hour?
It's not per hour. It's per month.
For crying out loud. I had an answer. Okay, in euros. So I have to convert it from yen because I had the answer in yen. So I think that, if you work 40 hours, California just passed $20 an hour, give or take, something like that. I think the U.S. is still like nationally pretty low at $8 or some awful number, but so 20 is 800 Minimum wage in Luxembourg. Luxembourg's a very wealthy country. I'm going to say that the minimum wage in Luxembourg is 3,800 euros per month.
3,800 euros. What do you think about that, Mr. Brandt?
Is this Price is Right rules? Can I guess $1 more?
Yeah, you can, but it's not Price is Right rules. It's just whoever's closest.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say, I don't know, euros versus dollars. So I'm just going to say 5,000.
5,000. Going with a $60,000 a year lifestyle. Paula, how's that sound to you?
Ouch.
Well, it's a 60,000 euro a year lifestyle.
This is hard because I think those are both very good guesses in terms of do I think either of those guesses could be correct? Yeah. I think man, so where do I situate myself? I'm going to go with 3,801.
3,801. So she's taking the upside of the middle.
Yeah.
From OG.
Yeah, I'll take the upside of the middle.
Playing defense.
Yeah, so we got 3,800 from OG, 3,801 from Paula, and 5,000 from Ben. We'll tell you who's right in just a minute as we hear from the people that make this free. OG, you started with $3,800 or 3,800 euros. How you feeling about that now?
I mean, it's about 50 grand, a little under 50 grand euros. That would be, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And Luxembourg's a pretty wealthy country. So I feel like that's a pretty good, I mean, like Paula said, I think these are all really close. I think Ben's got a better answer, honestly, but.
Ben, OG likes your answer. You feeling good? 5,000.
I'm always brimming with unearned confidence. So yeah, I'm sticking with my answer.
Paul, well, you couldn't change it anyway.
Oh, right,
you've been here before,
Right.
but yeah. Paula, 3,801.
I'm honestly, I'm second guessing myself. I feel like I should have gone 3,799 because then I would have captured the entire downside rather than what I did was I have a much narrower sliver that the answer has to land in. So.
Well, I don't know if that was the right move or not, but I will tell you this, that generally, if your instinct was to go $1 more and usually finish last, you should probably do the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I have a long track record of choosing one side of the equation or the other and being wrong.
But this time, was she right to trust her instinct? Let's find out.
Hey there, stackers. I'm European fun guy and gelato taste tester extraordinaire, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Today, in honor of Labor Day, we're celebrating the minimum wage, and Joe and OG certainly put the emphasis on minimum here in the basement. I mean, if I was paid $1 more, I'd earn a whole buck. Luxembourg boasts not only the highest minimum wage, but also the wealthiest country in Europe. As of 2020, the gross domestic product of the country was so gross, how gross was it? Yeah,
how gross was it?
It was over 120,000 American dollars per person. But before you go move to Luxembourg, economists predict that Ireland will gain the throne by 2027. But today's question was, how much is Luxembourg's minimum wage per month in euros? The answer? Well, what I will tell you is that Ben was 2,429 euros over. Paula was 1,230 over. OG was just a scant 1,229 over because the correct answer is just under 16 euro per hour, which translates to 2,571 euro per month, making OG once again the winner. Congratulations, OG. Woo!
I feel like, Paul, if you'd pumped the brakes just for a second and thought of that earlier.
Right. I know, right? Like, yeah, I was shortly after making that guess, I realized my error.
I feel like you just want OG to win. I just get that feeling.
OG, you can send the check too.
Send the Milk Bar gift certificate. I don't even know if Eric's going to do that this year for us, but we'll send the trophy.
That place.
Yeah. OG, any big words? You got a speech planned?
At the end of the year? No, I haven't.
No, I mean just for winning this one.
No.
No?
Just one inning and many. You don't come strutting off the field in the middle of the 7th just because you're up by 2 runs. That's bad juju.
Time for the second half of our discussion about extreme renting. The second half is brought to you by depositaccounts.com. Ben, you know what happens when you go to depositaccounts.com?
Good things.
Very, very good things. You find out that that brick and mortar bank where you've got your savings account might not be competitive, but you can compare more than 275,000 deposit rates from over 11,000 banks and credit unions for free. They'll rank them against each other at depositaccounts.com. Find out which ones are going to be best for you. All right. Second half of this discussion, let's talk about something that one of our stackers in the chat talked about. Let's talk about renting and retirement. And I'm going to go with the guy who's got the podcast. Retirement starts today. A stacker asks the question, Ben, what about selling your house and just renting a house during retirement or apartment during retirement? Where do you come down on that?
This is something I think that has changed generationally. As we go from kind of the baby boomers retiring to starting to see Gen X retire more, I don't think that newer retirees are as married to the idea of I've got to be building equity in everything. I think more people, myself included, are looking more at when the roof leaks, I want it to be someone else's problem. If I want to be gone for an extended period in retirement, I want the yard work to be someone else's problem. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in renting in retirement because you can focus on what specifically you want to be doing in retirement rather than having to do the maintenance of a house or worrying about flooding or worrying about a tornado or something like that. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in renting in retirement.
But you do have a problem, OG, which is that now you're, whatever happens inflationary wise, I don't know if that's the correct terminology, that's the scientific wording, but when it comes to inflation, like you become kind of just whatever happens, you're on that hook.
Well, yeah, but it does give you a lot of flexibility. And I would challenge somebody who has been in the same home for, I don't know, let's say maybe 20 years or more. So you're on the back side of paying the house off. Maybe you've got a regular 30-year mortgage. Go back, and if you still have the records of it, or if you can get the records of it from your county, find out how much your tax bill was and your house insurance bill was in year one, and contrast that to what it is today and forecast what that looks like in year 31 when you've got the mortgage paid off. And my guess is that number for taxes and insurance in year 31 is the same or more than the entire payment was when you first bought the house 30 years earlier. And so my point is that you've been experiencing this your whole life anyway, this slow kind of matriculation of inflation, and just it doesn't affect the payment, obviously, unless, you refinance or do something, pull equity out. But you know what I mean? Like if you just had 30-year mortgage, that payment has gone up every year. And if you say, well, even if I get rid of the payment, I'm still on the hook for $1,000 a month or $3,000 a month or $2,500, like whatever the tax bill and insurance bill is for your property, and you're on a hook for maintenance, which is ballpark roughly 1% of the cost of your house every year on average. So if you look at those numbers and add both of those things together, divide it out into a monthly number, I think you can buy a pretty fancy freaking house for the insurance cost, the tax cost, and the maintenance cost.
Rent one.
Rent one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. And understand that, hey, these numbers are going to go up because they're going to go up anyway. You're already on the hook for that. You just, for some reason, we do have this attachment to, but I own this house, so I'm good. It's like you said at the very beginning, well, you kind of own the house, but you don't own the dirt. You're renting the dirt. And if you stop paying the rent on the dirt in the form of taxes,
it's weird how quickly you don't own it anymore.
Yeah.
It's very, you're like, wait, I own it. Well, not anymore, pal.
OG, in a different way of supporting your point, we've been in a house over 30 years, just under 30 years actually now, and it's paid off. But for the first 20 to 25 years of that, if we looked at what we paid for the house at the beginning, and then I use an inflation calculator, see what that equivalent was in today's dollars, it was darn near to the dollar the same. So really, it hadn't, and it was in a neighborhood that was, pretty, it was tracking or exceeding the market. But it was about the same as what we paid for it. It was only in the last 5 to 7 years that it really started to exceed that. But I guess what I'm saying is it's not that hard to make a case where renting a home and then taking the difference of what you would have spent on taxes and maintenance and insurance and everything else and investing that is a better financial outcome. If all you want to look at is the dollars and cents and what the bottom line is, there's a lot of other less, what am I trying to say, intrinsic value of owning a house. There's an emotional component of it. But if you're just looking at dollars and cents, you can make a pretty strong case where renting is actually better for a home.
Well, speaking about the emotional component, Paula, people that are just casually aware of your work in financial media on the real estate space, right? Because you talk a lot about real estate. They might be surprised to hear your take on this as well. Because I'm sure somebody's walking their dog right now going, oh, Paula's going to be the voice of sanity here saying that owning the house is a better idea.
Well, I will say with regard to the inflation conversation that we've just been having, certainly as a homeowner, yes, you will, your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, your labor costs for services provided, maintenance costs, repair costs, those are all going to rise at market rates. However, when you're a renter, there's also going to be the additional layer of a landlord there who also has to put some type of a markup, on top of all of that.
They want to get paid too.
Exactly. Now, that all being said, there are a couple of additional points. One is I would look at the price to rent ratio in your location. So there are certain locations where the price to rent ratio is the price of a home divided by the annual cost of renting that home. And if you assess the price to rent ratio in a given location, if that is a relatively low number, we'll say 16 or lower, that's a good place to be an owner. If that is a relatively high number, like 25 or higher, it's a great place to be a renter. And if it's between like 15, 16 to 25, you're in the gray zone. There's a case to be made either way. But I would start by calculating the price to rent ratio in the place where you live. So going back to Manhattan, the price to rent ratio just for the average domicile here is 50. So it is a slam dunk case to be a renter in a place like Manhattan. Whereas there are other places, Toledo, Ohio, it's a slam dunk case to be an owner. And most places across the country are somewhere in the middle. And then bigger cities, it goes neighborhood by neighborhood sometimes. So I would start there. The other thing that I would say is I would also...
Other.
Exactly. The other. I would approach this question with the lens of, am I making the decision from a place of strength or from a place of weakness? Because I think that there's a big distinction between a retiree who is stressed about money and is thinking about selling their home as a last-ditch effort to squeeze some lemon from the juice because they're so worried about money, right? But they're, so they're trying to just cash up in any way they can, and they're in their early 60s and they just want the cash, but potentially because they're coming from a place of weakness and a place of scarcity, that's only going to set them up to be even more stressed when they're in their 70s and 80s. That's a very different scenario than someone who's in their early 60s and they're like, we're feeling great. We've got, big portfolios with lots of investments and a great withdrawal strategy. And we just want to travel a little bit and enjoy the early part of our retirement. Those are they're both retirees who are considering becoming renters, but they're very different starting points.
Ben, you've got to see both sides of the spectrum, I would think.
Yeah, I think what I agree with what Paul is saying. Some people are in a position where their home equity is their biggest asset. And other than like a reverse mortgage, selling it outright is probably the most straightforward way in tapping that equity. So some people are going to be in a position where they kind of have to sell. And I don't think that's really a negative thing. I think in many instances that can be a positive. Maybe you could rent a nicer place, lower maintenance. You hate your neighbors. It's a lot different selling your house and moving versus just waiting for your lease to run out and getting a new place. So there are people that are going to be in a position where they have to sell just to be able to live in retirement. But there's also people that can enhance their already flush savings with a couple $100,000 more of their equity. So I think it depends on where you're coming from, but either way, I don't see it as a big negative to rent, at least not in the same way maybe it was 20 years ago.
Does this come down to then, OG, something that you and I chat a lot about on lots of episodes of this show over the years? You're trying to really solve for flexibility.
Well, and I also think that it's so uniquely personal. I was thinking about a couple of clients. I know obviously Ben works in this space also, and it's like I can think of a client who was very adamant about, like, I can't wait to retire. I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to travel the world, and I'm going to solve this problem on the back end when I get done doing all my fun travel, and I'll figure out where I want to live. And that's, that happens with people on occasion. And then there's people that are like, I can't wait to move away from the 110 degree temperatures in Dallas and move back where my kids are, closer to a more temperate climate, and they move to a smaller, a smaller home, or they move from a small city to a bigger city that has more amenities or something that's more important to them culturally or healthcare wise or something like that. And so everybody's going to have a lot different perspective on where this falls. And then once you take that, like, where do I want to live component, I think it's great to add Paula's, scientific approach or tactical approach there of going like, well, is this a community that makes more sense to rent, or is this a community that makes more sense to own over, this period of time where I think I'm going to be here? And ultimately it's a big gamble anyway. I mean, how many times do we talk about people that move or change jobs or change careers or whatever? It's like, okay, we finally got this place where we want to live and retire, and it turns out we actually don't like the beach that much, or the weather here isn't as great as we thought, or I didn't know my kids were going to pack up in 6 years and move all the way across the country with my grandkids, and that's more important to me than being on the ocean. So I think ultimately, if you've got the opportunity to choose flexibility, choose the decision that gives you the most opportunity to have more decisions in the future. Like that's always my default when it comes to any sort of financial planning or financial advice. It's like, if you've got the opportunity to make a decision that makes you happy and it gives you a choice to make a decision in the future, sweet. If you're going to lock yourself in for a long period of time, you really need to spend a lot of energy on analyzing that to make sure you make a good one.
Yeah, even if you're positive that you do want to buy in retirement, if you're switching locations, I always recommend renting for like 6 months in the new place, because you want to figure out, is this a tourist place? Is there an on-season or an off-season? Which side of the tracks is the wrong side of the tracks? Get to know a city, because we've had clients in the past that have bought and then it wasn't what they thought it was, and they tried to sell 6 months or a year later, and you're going to lose your shirt most of the time. So
yeah,
burn the money. Yeah, if you hate renting, yes, you're burning the money, but rent for 6 months just to make sure you love it, because like OG said, grandkids enter the picture, or your friends from the neighborhood move 2 towns over and you want to be closer to them. Give yourself that flexibility, rent for 6 months, and then make more of a long-term decision.
Let's get back to this idea of extreme renting. And actually, before we do that, I think it's actually crazy talk, Paula, that you would apply some math to this versus using a rule of thumb that we create arbitrarily. Like, I think in finance, we should use arbitrary rules of thumb. No, I'm kidding. I see that all over the internet. I'm like, really? Why don't we actually apply some numbers first before we make that decision? But let's go back to some of these more extreme renting. They talk in this piece about renting tools, renting a phone. Where do you come down, Paula, on renting those types of things?
Well, those are very different. So tools, like if you need to rent a jigsaw for a day, right? Or you need to rent a drill for a day, that makes a lot of sense. This is a specialty item that you rarely need, but just for a weekend, you need a drill. Doesn't make sense to buy a drill just to use it for one weekend and then not have it sit somewhere gathering dust, right? So it makes a lot of sense. But something like a phone, it wasn't until I read this article that I was aware that you could rent electronic, something like a smartphone or an iPad.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I had no idea. And that, it's new enough information that my brain is still trying to process it together, because the reality, at least with a smartphone, is that it's only going to last you for about 2 years anyway with normal usage.
I was thinking about the way that we use a phone, because as an example, there was a photographer in here who rents some high-end photography equipment, and for their job, and they're always need the new thing. For them, it kind of makes sense to rent it just a few days a month. For us, in the way we use phones, I mean, you're pulling out your phone to do social media posts quite often, and having the new camera, the new thing to be able to do that, I think makes sense, because I was looking at what I paid for my iPhone 14 and then what they gave me back for it when I sold. And then I looked at the prices they talked about if I would have rented it. It almost, to you guys' crazy point about cars, I point out how crazy it is all the time. It's about the same, but the difference is I'm not out all this cash.
Yeah, but
it's
you
way
still have
different
a
with
14,
cars.
dude. That's embarrassing.
Wait, no. I got rid of my 14 and I sold it for a crap load of money.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
it was
that's
amazing how much they bought it back.
Isn't that how phones go? Where you're like, you get the one, you pay for it for a year, and then they go, hey, if you want the new iPhone 41X or whatever they're on now, send this other one back, and you just keep paying $35 a month on your AT&T bill. Actually, now it's $36 a month, and you're like, yeah, whatever. As long as it's got 7 cameras and a bajillion gigahertz.
As long as it makes French toast.
It's all I care about.
Yeah, I think that I think, Paula, to your point, when I read about renting, it's almost the same thing, but I'm not out that initial cash outlay, and I can use it for something else.
Yeah, I would need to dig more into the details of renting a phone, but that one broke my brain a little bit when I learned that was a possibility.
Ben, I want to flip the switch here before we say goodbye, which is, instead of renting this stuff, what about you know, you don't like the fact of renting clothes, but what if somebody wanted some of your cargo shorts you're not wearing right now, and they wanted to rent it from you? Have you thought about renting out your stuff to make a little bit of extra money?
You know, if I had like power tools and things like that, sort of taking the other end of the trade, right? I think it makes a lot of sense. If you need a chainsaw, do I want to store a chainsaw forever? Or do I want to borrow it for 2 days? If I had extra stuff that was valuable, that would be an interesting idea. I would want to make sure that I knew the commitment and the hours involved, and then kind of did the math. Am I making $2 an hour or $25 an hour to go through this effort? But it's an interesting idea.
Oh, geez, you read through this. Was there anything at the end of this discussion or at the end of this piece that you went, you know, maybe I should look into renting that you're not renting now?
No. I'm just
no.
kidding. Yeah. No, I was just back on the tool thing.
That's an honest answer. That's a good answer.
No. I was thinking back to the tool thing, and I was thinking, is there any self-respecting American that walks into Home Depot and says, I should just rent this drill? Oh crap. It's like, I need another drill.
Which drill are we talking about?
I've got 3 of them in my closet, Paula, and none of them are charged. They all use different batteries. I needed a hedge trimmer once, and that's in the garage. It's amazingly awesome. Very sharp still.
Yeah, he needed to do some serious manscaping. So I went with the hedge trimmer. By the way, Stacker Annette, who's in both the, she's in the Afford Anything community and in the SB1566 Benjamins community, she will tell you that with tools, the libraries become a really good option. But anyway, OG, back to you.
No, I was going to say, I think we put a lot of stank on this, but we already do a lot of renting anyway. We rent cars when we go on work trips or personal trips. We rent vacation houses through Airbnb or VRBO. You know, we rent jet skis and boats, and, you know, instead of buying them when you go to the lake for a few days, it's like, we already do all these things. And even if you don't rent them, you might borrow them from your friend who has one, which is like what? Renting it, but for free. And the whole thing is the same thing. You're just saying
better option, no contract.
Yeah. But you're saying, what are you going, what's going on in your brain? You're going, it doesn't make sense for me to own this forever. I just need to use it right now for a period of time. And I'm willing to trade the safety of having it be mine for the immediacy and the convenience of doing what I need to do with it and making it go away, whether you're paying for it or you're borrowing. We already do all this a lot. So
Ben, anything you feel differently now about renting after this?
I think it all boils down to kind of the constant with financial planning or retirement planning. You know, take your time, think things through, and just be as intentional as possible.
Yeah. Do I really need to own this? Paula, how about you?
Yeah. So I think renting is a great way to share resources, because most of the items that we have, whether it's our cars or our clothing or our tools, for 90+% of the time, just sit unused. And so I think the beauty of renting is that more people can use the same item, which means we get more use out of our resources.
I think about that when I'm cleaning out closets. I'm like, oh, I might use this someday. And then I think, somebody out there needs this thing right now, and I'm sitting on it for this day, which might be 8 to 10 years from now, and I can go get it back, and it clears up closet space. And I think of somebody, you know what I mean? It's not about, I get worried when I think about me getting rid of it, but then when I think about somebody else enjoying it while it's sitting in my closet,
you don't want to waste it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the one that I like that was really cool. I like the idea of renting a Christmas tree, being in a family that celebrates Christmas. Just the fact that it's a potted Christmas tree, just take the Christmas tree, put my lights on it, give it back. That's great. They can then replant the tree. I thought that was pretty quirky and wild and different. And I got to think, like you, Paula, more about the phone. I think that's going to do it for today. Once again, we will link to this Wall Street Journal piece on our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Let's talk about what you guys have going on at your wonderful places this holiday weekend. OG, let's start with you. What's happening at the OG household this weekend besides those wonderful steaks that
yeah, that'll be on Sunday or Monday. Tomorrow, Saturday, flying up to Indiana, Bloomington to watch a little college football game for fun. And the cornerstone of college football is in Bloomington, so we're going to go watch.
We had a message from a stacker about a previous episode. Speaking of Bloomington, Kevin on X said, please remind neighbor Doug that IU has 5 national titles and Purdue has 0, not 4.
Bang!
Just going back.
I'm still on mute.
Discussion we had earlier. On purpose this time, OG. On purpose.
So doing that on Saturday, coming home Sunday.
Fabulous. We'll go to our guest of honor last. Paula, what's happened at the Afford Anything podcast?
On the Afford Anything podcast, our interview with David Novak, the former CEO of Yum Brands, which is the parent company of KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. Our interview with basically the KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell CEO is up and running. So head to the Afford Anything podcast for a lengthy interview about leadership.
And about what's really in the Taco Bell meat.
He does talk about his favorite Taco Bell menu item.
That's who doesn't have a favorite Taco Bell menu item?
Chalupa, obviously.
Starving right now.
Mexican pizza, no meat.
Any of those. Mexican pizza, lots of meat. Ben, thanks for hanging out with us again, man. This was a great time, as usual.
Always a pleasure.
Well, what's going on at Retirement Starts today?
At Retirement Starts today, we are going to do a deep dive on retirement tax. And we're developing a tool in-house where we can have a person answer a quiz and we can kind of fill you in on what we feel the totality of the taxes are going to be over your retirement. So trying to develop some tools, some Excel tools for our listeners.
That's awesome. And that's it. Retirement Starts today, the podcast, wherever finer podcasts are at. And if people want to go to your website, where do they go?
They can check out retirementstartstodayradio.com or they can check out 1millionretired.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us again. It was fun as usual. And it's this time of year, Ben, I'm always wishing I was up there with you in North Dakota where you don't have 108 degrees.
It's a beautiful 76 in Bismarck right now. It's delightful.
Easy with that talk. It's crazy talk. All right. I think that's going to do it for today. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. If you know somebody that needs some financial literacy in their life, just tell a friend about today's show and they will thank you. And so will we right now. Thanks to everybody who's done that. And at the end of our show, we always end by asking what should be on our to-do list. And Doug, what should be on our to-do list?
So, what's stacked up on our to-do list for today? First, remember when OG totally blew our minds when he said,
well, if it flies, floats, or you should rent it.
Second, I gasped when Benjamin Brandt had this to say about bouncy houses.
Rent it.
But the big lesson? Did you hear about the short guy who got pickpocketed in Luxembourg? I can't believe someone could stoop so low. Wait for it. Thanks to Benjamin Brandt for joining us today. You'll find his podcast, Retirement Starts Today, wherever you're listening to us now. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thanks to Paula Pant for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you listen to finer podcasts. And finally, thanks to OG for joining us. Looking for good financial planning help? Head to stackingbenjamins.com/OG for his calendar. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Saul-Sehy. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamins Show.